Welcome to Markers and Milestones, where we explore educational opportunities for young men and women beyond the traditional college, all from a Christ-centered perspective. I'm Lee Bortons, and I'm with my co-host, Amanda Kleist. Today is Wednesday, January 10th, 2024. Welcome to the new year. It's our first episode. And we're joined by Emma Borton, CC graduate and Markers and Milestone podcaster. A lot of folks who listen to our podcast are familiar with Emma, and they see her in the background and as the producer, but she doesn't say much. So we thought we'd give her the opportunity to share with students transitioning from high school to adulthood, her experience and all the wonderful things she's managed to accomplish. So welcome to the show, Emma.
Thank you so much. Just firstly, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be considered as someone who has something worthy to say because I don't consider myself as an extraordinary person. I'm only 24. I don't own my own business. I'm not a celebrity. I haven't done something extraordinary with my life, but I have worked in a lot of places. I started working in networking when I was really young. And so I feel like I have some things to share, but I appreciate and feel honored that you're having me on the show.
Sure. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about the actual work experience, even starting back in high school while you were homeschooled, and then where that carried you through college and adulthood, and kind of how those opportunities came along.
Yeah, for sure. So when I was in high school, I knew I had to make money to support my hobbies and the different things that I wanted to have that my parents maybe couldn't afford. So I started working when I was quite young. I worked in the makeup industry. So I had a lot of firsthand experience working with clients and how to give good customer service, how to communicate well, how to explain something and sell. So making pitches and focusing on elocution and making sure that those skills were fine-tuned before I worked my way up into a bigger company role. So I started working at Merle Norman, which was a cosmetic store. And then I moved up to Sephora, which is the most familiar, I think, cosmetic department store. And those were really great experiences, especially in high school, just teaching me those fine skills. And around my senior year, figured out that I wanted to go to college in New York City, which is very expensive to live in New York City. It's very expensive to go to college. And so I started really upping my hours and working as much as I can to afford to go to college. My father is in full-time ministry, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, and she homeschooled me and my brother. And so we didn't have a lot of money. And I knew that if I wanted to chase my dream, I had to work for it. And so homeschooling was really great because it provided me with that time flexibility that I could work and also school and be able to afford to go and live my dream in the Big Apple when I was 18.
Were you able to, during those high school years, do you feel like you got the job you did because you could be flexible with your hours? You didn't have to wait till 3 o'clock or the weekends?
Yes, that was definitely helpful. I think, I mean, that was a different time. I don't know if it's still as easy to get a job when I did. I started working when I was 14 at a small cosmetic boutique. And so I think that I was able to start working in that environment being young because it wasn't regulated by a ton of HR representatives and big business people. So I wasn't, paid on a payroll. I was paid in cash, and it helped to have flexible hours for sure. But I think what they were most interested in is having someone eager to sell products. It's not really being a salesperson isn't always sought after. And so having someone young and eager to learn and do those things, I think is what they were most intrigued and interested in having me on board. And so that's how I kind of got into the industry. And then once I got a little bit older, I was able to move up into like a Sephora, and having flexible hours was great for me because I needed the money. But it was interesting. They never really saw me as like different from everyone else when it came to my homeschooling schedule. They kind of just saw me as someone different because I was young and articulate and I was respectful. And they had never seen that before in someone of my age. And so I think that's what they were most intrigued about.
So, Emma, where'd you move from to the Big Apple?
Yeah, so I moved from Florida,
All right, so
St.
West,
Petersburg
East
area.
Coast, all the way up. Okay, just
Yes.
checking because for some of us, moving to the Big Apple from where was the question.
Sure. Yeah. And it would be different if I was, living out on a farm, I guess, or maybe not so different. I wasn't in a big city for a while. I was just in a Florida suburb. But I'd watched all the movies, seen all the Broadway shows. That's where I wanted to be. So I was going to make it happen no matter what.
So then how were you able to, I mean, you went to a private Christian school and basically paid your own bills. And there's not a lot of young people that can afford that. So can you tell us like how CC Plus helped and jobs you had there? Like how did you make that dream a reality when money seemed like a stumbling block?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't like to be a advertisement for go to college in the cheapest way possible. I don't like that to be my message because I think that college and learning in general is just so much more than the price tag and the diploma and the time period it takes to get from point A to point B. But I did CC plus my last year in CC and Challenge 4. I was the first round of students who were able to have like a full year worth of credits. And so I did every class that was available to me. And I highly recommend that at the Challenge 4 stage, especially if you do plan to do something in higher ed, getting your, bachelor degree, and because you are doing that senior thesis in Challenge 4 and you're getting reviewed by your peers and community day and your parents and your family, which is amazing. But then you have that second level of being assessed by a professor and getting accredited for that work. And that will come in handy 4 years later when you're working on your thesis for your bachelor degree. And so I highly recommend doing CC plus during that year. So I had that year. And so I was able to go to college for only 3 years. And I was a little shy of, I think, 2 credits. So I had 2 semesters where I was doing 6 credit semesters and working. And it was by far one of the hardest years of my life. But I knew that there was no point in paying a full year's, with how my school was set up, a full year's tuition to just do 2 or 3 classes. So I time managed that I learned in high school. I said, I have this amount of time of the day. I can get all these classes done and still do my homework and still work. And that's what I did. So I went to a private Christian college for 3 years. And I had enough money saved from working in high school to get through my first year of college, the first year of tuition, which didn't include rent and it didn't include food. And my parents, being the loving, generous people they are, said, we're going to give you the cash for 6 months to help you pay your rent, help you pay for food, but then you got to get a job or you have to come home. And that was amazing, but it did put the clock on in my head. In those 6 months, I just knew I had to get a job. And that's when I started really learning how to work to find work. And I reached out to everyone I knew to try to find a few jobs. And luckily, I was connected with a sweet friend of mine who nannied for a lot of different families. And so I started nannying for my first year in New York. And that's how I paid my rent and my food and any extra expenses my entire first year. So that's how I got to college, how I made it through that first year. And then I did take on some debt the next 2 years, but I learned to keep moving up. Nanning was great. I have so many stories. It's a wonderful job. Financially, it's actually pretty stable when you're in New York City, but it doesn't help you on your resume. It sometimes doesn't help to get into those organizations that you want to be. in. And so I knew I had to try something else. And so, yeah,
And
that's kind of how I did it.
so what were those something else's you stumbled into for the next 2 years?
Sure. Yeah. So after nannying, I reached out to a few people that I knew to see if they could get me a job in my area of study. So I was studying in PR and communications. So I really wanted to work at either a big cosmetic company and do their marketing, or work in some sort of media firm and do things for them. That was very hard. It's very hard to get a job when you have no experience on your resume. I had my Sephora experience and, of course, my Merle Norman experience from working in high school. But companies, at least at that time, they were looking for experience even post college to be able to get these entry level jobs, which is crazy because how is anyone graduating from school supposed to get a job if no one takes a risk or gives them an entry level position? So I knew I had to kind of backtrack a little bit, maybe not apply for these roles that I wanted, and start going for assistant jobs. And so that was my next like step into the doors of some of these organizations, is applying for assistant roles. And I found an assistant role at a finance firm, and I started working for them. They were actually a pension fund. And so I was assisting someone in their elderly care development team. And that's how I got into that organization. And they were wonderful. They paid incredibly for how young I was and for the amount of work I was doing. And I would have stayed there full time if they had offered me a full-time position. But I worked there as much as I could, as much as they would allow me to, for 2 years straight, and also nannied on the side to kind of pay my rent and pay my food and my tuition for the next 2 years. So
You're able
that
to
was great.
graduate. Yeah, and you were able to graduate. So how did you know to go like for that assistant job? I mean, were your parents or someone at the college advising you?
That's a great question. So a little bit of yes and no. My parents helped because they knew people who worked either at these different pension funds or someone who lived in the city who could give me a referral. And what was great about nanning and also tapping into your connections with your family or your friends is that they make excellent referrals, which are huge when you're applying for these jobs. Even if you don't have the experience, to have someone to say, oh, I can vouch for their character, or I can say that they've done this and that in their hometown or something to that extent, is really, really big. So when I started applying for these assistant jobs, which I got the idea from a professor who said that she was an assistant for many years, and from that she was able to get a higher level job. So no one never explicitly told me to start looking to be an assistant, but I just thought, oh, if she could do it, I could do it. And so that's kind of what gave me the idea to start applying for assistant roles. And I tried so many assistant jobs, and those are hard to get too, but they're much easier than going for the straight entry level analyst, PR marketer. You know, if you're young like I was and don't have a list of experience, and someone who's the CEO of a company going to get you in. So,
Emma, so you took clues from people who went before you, say,
yeah,
maybe this is a route. And your parents said, hey, we will start you out, but you're the one, we'll prime the pump, we'll get
right.
you started, but you have to pick up from here. So that's what I'm hearing about two things. So actually, this is just give me your best remembering estimate. And I realized it was a bit ago and a bit of life ago.
Yes.
Um, about how many applications did it take to get one yes?
Yes. I think probably five really good applications. And by good, I mean, of someone who worked in the company. The best thing to do would be, oh, I'm graduating from this college. I know that so and so works there who also graduated from that college, or finding some sort of connection. That's why I mean that's what I mean by a good application. I think bad applications are kind of just like shots into the void. And sometimes those work. I won't discredit that. But I mean, 5 really good. I know someone who knows someone who works there, or I've worked in an industry very, very similar, or your partner I worked for, or something like that. But it took about 5 no's to get a yes.
So one way that doesn't sound like a lot of applications, but you just said that they weren't just applications. It sounds like you did a lot of legwork before you made the applications. Tell us about like that time and the process it took.
Yeah, I get really passionate about searching for jobs because I did it for so long and I made so many mistakes. But I see often people going through different job application websites. I can't even think of all the names right now, but they just have a resume. They're like, oh, I like that job. I like the description. I can do that. Submit resume, submit resume, submit resume. And sometimes these companies ask for you to write a cover letter. Cover letters can also be very vague and non-specific. You could just submit the same cover letter to 10 different companies and it not go anywhere. And so what I mean by really good applications is finding a mutual connection, having a referral that is relevant to that job, and then reaching out in some other way or submitting your application in some other way that's not through like a job seeker website, or maybe even not their own website, because HR gets so many applications at a time. So good applications are the one that take a lot of work. It takes a lot of research to get in front of people and to have your name read. And yeah, so I'm sure I'm sure there's 10 applications for random jobs with my name on it that's floating out there somewhere in the abyss. But the 5 really good ones I worked hard for, and I was sad that I got a no.
I appreciate you saying that, Emma, because when we do get no's, even though we have the belief that God's putting the steps that He wants in front of us,
Mm-hmm.
it's still, we put effort and we care about that people, we cared about the product. It's okay to be a little sad even as you move on to whatever the Lord has next. No's are
Right.
part of the process.
Yeah, and I think it made it easier too for me at that time, is I wasn't being highly selective either.
Mm-hmm.
I just needed something to pay the bills. And so when I did finally get a yes, I was like, oh, praise God. I can afford to live another 6 months here. It wasn't, no, my dream job is gone forever. I just knew that, if I got that one job, if I could stay another year, then I could find another job and keep moving up and keep moving up, and then hopefully get that dream role. But yeah, it's tough. It's really tough coming out of college these days for kids.
So, so a lot of that experience you described was though getting you through college. So did you same process to get your after college job, or had you already made the connections and it was easier?
Yeah, so I kept the job at the pension fund even after I graduated. The sad part about that job was it was only part-time and a little bit over part-time, I think, against HR's preferences, but they didn't offer me a full-time job, which is the reason why I had to go out and do the whole rigmarole thing again. But the good thing was I already knew and had established relationships with people who were really solid into their careers at different companies. And so that's when I reached out to a friend and I said, hey, like, I know you work for this company. I make a really good assistant. It's not really in my area of study, but I think I would be a really good fit with the company's mission and values and blah, blah, blah. And so she referred me to her company, and they reached out to me actually and wanted my resume, my cover letter. And so I sent that to them and I got a job as an assistant there. And then I kept getting promoted in their assistant ranks. It kind of started with an executive assistant over me, or over someone who was over me. So it was like a chain of assistants to get to the top. And then eventually, in I think it was about 8 months, I kind of rose in the chain and got my own two presidents and assisted them. And so I was no longer under another assistant. So it's kind of like the structure of Devil Wears Prada, if you've seen that movie. There's the two assistants, there's the one who's favored and the one who just gets the coffee. So I was coffee girl for a while until I got bumped up to the British girls role.
So I'd like to know more about the other young people you were working with. Did they go through a similar route to try to get this kind of job? Well, actually, maybe first describe the kind of company you were with. So we
Sure. Yeah, my most recent company, I mean, I did a little bit of time for them working in investments, and then I was transferred over to their nonprofit side. So now I work still part-time with them in their nonprofit sector. So I got out of strictly finance and I'm now more in relationship management and uh, media presentations, stuff like that, which is great. How I helped other young people.
no, how did the other people you worked with, how did they get these jobs? Like you're a
Oh,
go-getter. Were they all go-getters like you, or did they all know the right people? Was this unusual what you did, or was that what you had to do to get jobs there?
yes. So the company that I'm still working part-time for, they already had four, well, now they have four graduates from the same school that I was going to. So the company's already very familiar with the type of students that came from the college I went to, which is how they got in. So, like I said, having someone in these companies that can be a reference to you, or you have some sort of mutual connection, it's kind of how Ivy League grads help each other out. It's like, you went to Harvard, I went to Harvard, here's a job. And so it helps to be like, oh, I know so and so who works there. We went to the same school, maybe cross paths, something like that. And that's how the other four that still work at the company did it, is they also knew of one who knew of another and kind of got there. But there's me and there's someone else who are the same age, and we were the youngest people to ever work there. So I think we both had a similar mentality of reaching out to older, more established people who had graduated from our college who worked there to try to get a reference to even apply. And we definitely broke the stereotype there being the youngest, but they said, okay, they can do it. So they hired us both.
So, Emma, you're working part-time. Are you still in New York?
I'm not in New York and I'm technically working full time. Part
Wow.
time, I work very, very, very part time with this nonprofit, but full time, I am now employed with CC, which is wonderful. And it's very interesting to see how everything like in my life has kind of led me here and has all been very connected in some way. But I am back in Florida, which is wonderful. And I got married and now I'm working on a new business, which I guess is motherhood and family. So I'm always full speed ahead. So hopefully when you talk to me again in 10 years, I'll have a business or something.
And to be absolutely transparent here, this is your daughter-in-law, right, Lee?
Yes, that's why
Yeah,
she's employed full time and my podcast producer.
yeah. So the last name is daughter-in-law name, just in case you're looking at last names out there in the world and thinking, is this Lee's daughter? And they just haven't said that yet. And Lee only gave him 6 months and Lee, no, 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 daughter-in-law. So beautiful. So Emma, one of the questions that I often ask the people who come who are not the students is how do you help your students connect with their local church community? So tell me about finding local community in New York City for your church life.
Yes, that was really important. And it was really emphasized to get involved in a church when we were in college. I didn't go to a specific denomination school, it was just very broad Christian. And because of that, they said, all of our students should be involved in some church in the city. And church shopping in the city is a little different, I think, than church shopping in your hometown or in a different state. There's so much diversity, there's so many options, and it's kind of a little bit of a trial and error. I so many of my friends, and myself included, we went years going from church to church, maybe trying this one, trying that one, until we found something that fit. And it wasn't until I was working full time and actually out of college where I found the church that I would go to for the rest of my time in New York. And so it takes time, but through all of that, the city is actually much smaller than people give it credit for. And it might have been because we were all Christians, or we all knew someone who knew someone who knew you, who dated this person. But I always found that with each church I went to, I would meet people that would know my friend from college or from the other church I went to. And so I never really felt like I was going from one big fish pond to the next. Like, it always felt very much connected. And I think, yeah, getting plugged into a church is essential in the city to have that spiritual guidance, to have that community of people praying around you and praying for you. But it takes time. And so I just tell people who move there, have grace, try a lot. If something doesn't feel right for you, then, go to the next church, and it's totally fine. Everyone is very understanding, at least in the Christian community in New York City. I found through all the churches, people my age, they just want to talk about Jesus. And then if you're not going to their church, no problem. They'll still get together with you on a different day and have good conversations.
So I know that when you were at, I'm gonna say we went to college because William went there too. It's the King's College is where they met. Well, not really, but kind of. We can talk about that another time. They both went to the King's College. They knew of each other at that point. It wasn't until afterwards they really connected. Um, so during that time at the King's College, I know that you had a mentor, and then afterwards you've continued that relationship. How did you find a mentor, and how do you manage to keep the relationship when you don't even live near each other?
I'm so glad you asked me this question, because I wish that everyone in CC knew to do this, and the infrastructure is already there. There's families that that you're in challenge 1 and they have a sibling in challenge 4. So there's already this built-in community of kids that are younger and older that you can reach out to, that you can look up to. And so I found my mentor / really amazing friend through my challenge 4 director. And she was in challenge 4, I think 5 years before me. So she's 5 years older. And if I was in challenge 1 or challenge B, I would have, started thinking about this stuff and, pointing someone out to be my mentor. But I didn't have this idea until I was in challenge 4 and moving to the city, where I reached out to my director. I said, I really wish I knew someone in New York City, or someone who could help me find a job, or someone who could just be a friend. And she said, I actually had a student 5 years ago who wanted to go to New York City and is still there. And so we were connected through CC, and she has always just been so dedicated to reaching out to me. Every quarter she'll say, how can I pray for you? She'll send me a Advent devotion every year. I mean, I really just don't know what I did to deserve her, but I think that we all want to have someone to look up to. And then when we feel like we're in a place in our lives, we want to be able to help someone younger than us in some way. And so I think that everyone is really willing to be a mentor and a mentee. And I advocate for it at any age. And I think that it's a good thing to start thinking about, for CC parents to start thinking about, maybe for their kids in challenge 1. If it's don't do a sibling or someone that you see all the time. I think maybe someone who is just a little bit older than you are, who's about to go through a similar stage of life that you're about to go through, but just a few years later. And so they're able to provide some wisdom, but more relevant than someone who's like 20 years older than you.
Some of our most successful CC communities, a mom or dad took it upon themselves to make that happen, and they've paired off, challenged 3-4 students with AB students for that year or two that they're all there. So I think that's a really good idea. I mean, wherever you are, it doesn't matter whether it's CC or not, your church, right? Especially if you know you're going to be moving one day somewhere, or your military family, it's really good to have someone ahead of time.
Yeah. And something that I like to say about this podcast is that you have so many amazing guests on here that either run their own business, or they're politically active in some way, or they're a part of an organization that does meaningful work. And I always think, wow, for any soon to be CC graduate or CC graduate who's seeing this, that's the connection. That's a part of the good application process. Like, hey, I saw you on Lee Borton's Markers and Milestones. I also did CC. So there you have the connection, and you can proceed then to pitch whatever you're trying to get. But yeah, it's very important to stay connected and to be intentional about your relationships.
So you thought of a lot of these things. Did you read any of those books, like What Colors Your Parachute, networking, the successful things of Covey? Did any of those inform your thinking as you were forming your philosophy of getting my next thing?
Yeah, that's actually great. I would love for you to send me some of those books. I read a lot of business books, like a lot of Drucker's books,
Drucker. Okay.
Good to Great. I read that many times front to back. And so I was more fascinated, I think, with relationships as a business than as of a transaction. I think when I was in the city, I always saw networking as you go to the party, you shake the hands, you exchange your business cards, and no real connection is made. And so I always just found the business aspect of relationship more interesting. And then I made sure I had intentional personal relationships that I could lean on for help in terms of jobs and networking, because networking is interesting. You meet a lot of people in your career. If you go to conferences or these big galas, but nothing may ever happen, or you just know someone vaguely, but it's the good applications come when you can have a referral. So unless you're networking for the sake of a personal relationship, I don't know how I feel about it. Sometimes I feel like it's too transactional, but I would love to read those books. They sound very fascinating.
Well, I was just curious because you are doing something that's recognizable, that like Lee's nodding, right? This is a recognizable, lots of people who get their jobs, this is the way they get them. It's the power of the soft connection. It's the seven things of whatever that famous actor was that I can't remember because he's not that famous anymore.
Kevin Bacon, the 7
There we go.
degrees of
Separation, right?
or
Yeah.
6,
The power of the soft network. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, but I just wanted to know if somebody was thinking, wow, I wouldn't think of all that if you'd read anything. So beautiful.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was experiential. When you live in a place like New York City at 18, 19, 20, you have time to read, yes, but most of your time you're running through subways, you're getting to the next thing, you're going to this meeting, to this conference, to this gathering, to meet this person. And so you just kind of have to learn in survival mode. But if you are interested in this stuff, I recommend reading it ahead of moving and going into an environment like that. It definitely would have been helpful for me, but I figured it out. Just took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. Well,
So
you
we
did
often,
well.
yeah, she did well. I have one question that we often ask, which is, what would you like to tell your 18-year-old self that you didn't know that you might listen to now?
Uh, be patient. I think I always worried too much about how I would pay for things, how I would go to this place or make this thing happen. If I could tell my 18-year-old, 19-year-old self anything, is just be patient. It will happen. Worry less. And it's funny because I don't think that was really, I don't really think a light bulb went off in my head about that until I got married to William, who doesn't seem to really worry about a lot. And I was still, when we were engaged, still worried about what my career would look like, what my life would look like. And by not worrying, things have actually turned out even better than I could imagine, doing even more meaningful work than I ever thought. And so I think not worrying and being patient will serve me well. But it did light a fire when I was really young.
Mhm.
It motivates you a little bit. But if I could just say that very gently to my 18-year-old self, I probably would.
Well, I think
How
you'd
long?
also say, let me read some of those books Amanda just recommended too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So my next question for you is, how long have you been married?
It'll be a year in February,
And when's the baby due?
April, first week of April.
And I know you have a lovely mentor type personality, also named Grandma, here on this call. But do you have that 5 years ahead of you woman in your life that you're already talking to about this mothering gig? Are you doing
Yeah.
the same thing in your personal life?
Yeah, my mentor, she's still very
Okay.
present in my life. We still get together whenever she's in town. She's not in a season of motherhood yet, but I look up to her still with, she just has so much wisdom and life experience that I don't have. In terms of motherhood, I definitely lean on Lee and my mom, and I have friends that are moms. And I think right now what's been really special is I have friends that live near me that are going through what I'm going through just a couple weeks later. And I kind of like having them to share things with me. Just it feels more relevant and less like I'm trying to, or less like someone's trying to tell me what to do, and more so just we're going to struggle through this together. And so I've noticed that's been that's worked very well for me so far.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, I just knew that people wanted to know more about Emma because her name's there all the time.
Mhm.
And then she really is a go-getter. And a lot of young people don't understand how picking up the phone and emailing and making those connections are the way you do things, that it might be fun to be on Monster or LinkedIn or Indeed or any of those things. But unless I mean, even if you're superstar at something, I don't see how they help you that much. You're just part of the list at that point. So I appreciate that you get on the phone and that you go after the things you want and don't wait for them to come to you.
Thank you. Yeah. That's what I'm telling all of my Challenge 4 CC friends I know. Like don't go on Indeed yet. Be smart.
Oh, good. All right. Well, I'm finished. We've got the gist of how you talk to everyone and networked, and we'll just keep encouraging our other students to look for those and not just markers and milestones, but the people and leaders that they come into contact with in order to move on. So thank you so much, you guys, for being with me.
Happy
Thank
New
you.
Year. Thanks for being here, Emma. Good to see you, Lee.
You
Of
too.
course.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.